Hello, ladies and gentlemen. James here. Hope you're having a good evening, a good day. Hope you're having a good one. Well, I'm about to take you through a little history lesson about America that some people don't talk about. I'm gonna show a couple clips on the History Channel about black people are the only one that were attacked in this history of racism against different groups of people. Let's examine. Ain't that something? So that was in the 40s, but they weren't the only ones that went through it. The Italians went through it.
Any pizza, any toppings, just $9.99 online. Domino's best deal ever is back.
On May 5th, 1921, two Italian-born anarchists, Nicola Sacco at right and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, are arrested for the robbery and murder of two men at a shoe factory in Massachusetts. Their case becomes a sensation thanks to the hot-button issue of immigration. By the 1920s, 4 million Italians have come to live in America. Those with communist or anarchist leanings are seen as a national security threat. Many have been deported. The crackdown on dangerous immigrants will fuel the extraordinary rise of a young federal agent, J. Edgar Hoover. But the case against Sacco and Vanzetti is flimsy, and many consider them scapegoats. When Judge Webster Thayer sentences both men to death, people are outraged. Thousands take to the streets in protest. As the story spreads, riots erupt nationwide and overseas. First in Paris, Rome, and Milan. Then in London, where communists attack America's excessive use of the death penalty. But Thayer holds firm, and despite 6 years of appeals and requests for a retrial, on the 23rd of August, 1927, he sends Sacco and Vanzetti to the electric chair.
So it was the Mexicans and it was the Italians that did the same. That this is a history on different people that they did this to. America did this to different people. Wow, it just never amazes me. That's why what we see in the past, we see in the present. What they do in the immigration now, the different groups of people, and this was the original people, immigrants. Some were original, but now let's talk about look at the Asians. So let me. Fair use only.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal. But no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. At each relocation center, evacuees were met by an advance contingent of Japanese who had arrived some days earlier and who now acted as guides. Naturally, the newcomers looked about with some curiosity. They were in a new area, on land that was raw, untamed, but full of opportunity. Here they would build schools, educate their children, reclaim the desert. Their own physicians took precautions to guard against epidemics. They opened advanced Americanization classes for college students, who in turn would instruct other groups. They made a rough beginning at self-government, for while the Army would guard the outer limits of each area, community life and security within were largely up to the Japanese themselves. They immediately saw the need for developing civic leaders. At weekly community meetings, citations were given to the block leaders who had worked most diligently. Special emphasis was put on the health and care of these American children of Japanese descent.
That's what they did to the Japanese. America did this to Italians, Japanese, and Mexican Americans. Put them in internment camps. Now, and there were more anti-Latino things going on. So where does they said there's anti-Latino discrimination in history? This is what people who come across as Latino, but just give a story about it from back in the 1930s. Oh, it talks about Mexican Americans. Okay, same thing out about this, pretty much the same thing like the zoot suits and stuff. So that's the Mexican Americans. So let's get down to the origins of policing in America.
For a limited time, get any pizza with any toppings for just $9.99 online. Only at Domino's.
I think there's a lot of people who say, yeah, I know the police are broken, let's just enact the reforms that will fix it. But the question for me is, if the police are broken, when did they break? What year in American history did the police break? It seems really trite to say if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it, but nothing illustrates that more than the history of policing.
Policing, in one form or another, has existed since colonial days. In the form of night watches, local sheriffs, and militias. But it wasn't until the 19th century that northern cities such as Boston created modern police departments as we would recognize them today. These northern departments were not the first example of a uniformed, publicly funded law enforcement institution in America.
By the time the northern colonies were afoot in the 17th century, the idea of keeping track of the most valuable asset in the United States, that is, enslaved Africans, animated much of what we recognize today as law enforcement.
In the 1700s, the South saw the rise of official, salaried slave patrols, whose task was to capture, control, and brutalize enslaved people.
The initial acts that empowered slave patrols and militias were acts that basically empowered all white people to surveil and punish all black people.
These slave patrols were required to serve a tour of duty, usually up to a year. Individuals were compensated for their time, but they were also penalized if they did not show up for their required service.
all white people, including white children, were expected to enforce so-called slave codes. These laws were meant to prevent enslaved people from organizing or rebelling. It was against the law, for example, for enslaved people to leave their plantations, gather without a white person present, learn to read or write, or even defend themselves if attacked by a white person. After the Civil War, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery except as a punishment for a crime.
The South immediately moves to exploit this loophole by passing a series of crime bills known as black codes, which essentially criminalize all forms of black freedom. They criminalize unemployment by adopting these very broad vagrancy laws that essentially criminalize any black person who can't prove that they're working. Any African American who challenges the terms of work, barters or brokers for a better deal, turns down a terrible offer, walks away from an abusive employer or a relationship with a landowner, by definition becomes a vagrant and by definition becomes a criminal. They could then be sold at sheriff's auction back to the very person who had just claimed that they were a criminal by virtue of not accepting a fair labor deal.
This practice of convict leasing earned enormous revenues for the states who lent out their prisoners, and huge profits for the companies using this prison labor in mining, railroads, and other industries. The new laws effectively re-enslaved those who had just gained their freedom and required new police to take over the former duties of the slave patrols.
When you have black people serving in political offices for the first time, when you have black landowners in abundance, when you have black professionals, there are Reconstruction era judges, the stakes are even higher for this everyday performance of black subservience to white domination. It is the police who will ultimately serve that function of reminding black people in many cases their lower status in society.
What we see is that that general way of thinking about race and thinking about disorderly people never really changes. It's kind of woven into the DNA. But it's not just because individual police officers are racist, it's because the institution was literally created to make sure that wealthy and powerful people could extract labor.
Early police departments in the North had a similar goal to control labor, and were notoriously corrupt.
The police functioned as an expression of political elites and powerful, affluent people who essentially wanted poor people to stay in their segregated slum communities. Police often functioned as enforcers of political machines, functioned one step removed from gangs.
Police often worked in the service of business owners who were faced with growing unrest among their labor forces in the wake of mass European immigration and rapid industrialization.
One of the best examples of this is the Pennsylvania State Police. The institutions that precede the Pennsylvania State Police are actually private police forces which are owned by people who are running coal mines. And their job is explicitly to control the workers who are trying to unionize for rights.
The story of policing in the United States is the story of systems meant to protect and serve only a fraction of Americans. It is this history that many of today's activists point to when calling for the defunding or even the abolishment of police.
The cops not protecting us, we gotta protect us.
The ability to police crime or inequality or poverty or races or whatever was the social problem to be solved by law enforcement was always an act of political power and discretion. And it just so happens that African Americans have stood in that position for the longest of any other population.
What the history does is it allows us to decouple the idea of public safety from the idea of police. What actually protects women from rape and from sexual assault, right? What actually stops people in communities, both black and white, from killing each other? What kinds of things actually help people who are mentally ill? Are those things police? And I think very quickly, once you reflect on that, you realize the answer is no. We have to stop saying police are broken. We have to say police are working, and we need to create another institution to do public safety.
So, what have we learned about the police and how it started in America? And that's the way, that's when black people mention about being policed in the ghetto, and that, imagine from back then all the way to now, it's still going on, the way they police, and it's still set up that. So the government shifted from one generation after another generation, and it's the same talking points from back then. But this is America. People don't want, they're trying to water down things like this, and then they switch it around, you know, because it's like, this is the truth. And it's really sad, man. You know, it's really sad that we live in a country that we still struggle to this day. We still fighting the same thing, the same spirit, the same old thing. And this is, so you saw how the way they riot, right? Oh shoot. Sorry, okay. Somebody. Oh boy. So the same system that I had a video here. So it's the same old system. Now, see if this won't work. Here's the riot, the Springfield Race Riot, 1908.
In August 1908, the city of Springfield, Illinois, the very birthplace of Abraham Lincoln, was rocked by an explosion of racial violence. What began with false accusations quickly escalated into a brutal riot, exposing the deep-seated racial prejudices that permeated American society, even in the North. The immediate catalyst for the riot was a series of false accusations against African American men. On August 14th, a white woman claimed she had been raped by a black man, and another woman accused a black man of assaulting her. These unverified claims ignited a furious white mob demanding the accused men be handed over for lynching. However, the underlying causes ran much deeper. Springfield, like many American cities, was grappling with rapid demographic changes, economic competition, and pervasive racial discrimination. African Americans, many of whom had migrated from the South, seeking better opportunities, faced systemic prejudice in housing, employment, and social interactions. This created a volatile environment where even minor incidents could trigger widespread unrest. When the sheriff moved the accused black men to a safer jail outside Springfield, the white mob, raged by what they perceived as a denial of justice, turned their fury on the black community. On the night of August 14th, continuing into August 15th, thousands of white rioters rampaged through the streets. They attacked African American individuals, businesses, and homes, burning and destroying property. Black residents were dragged from their homes and lynched. The violence was indiscriminate, targeting anyone who was black or perceived to be sympathetic to them. The local police and militia were overwhelmed, and it took the deployment of thousands of state troops to finally quell the unrest after 2 days of terror. The Springfield Race Riot resulted in at least 7 deaths, dozens of injuries, the destruction of over 40 homes and 24 businesses in the black community. Thousands of African Americans fled Springfield, many never to return. The riot served as a stark reminder that racial violence was not confined to the American South, and that systemic racism was a national problem. The brutality and injustice of the Springfield riot shocked many. Americans had played a significant role in the founding of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, in 1909. This pivotal event underscored the urgent need for an organized civil rights movement to combat racial discrimination and violence across the United States. The Springfield Race Riot remains a powerful and painful chapter in American history, testament to the enduring struggle for racial equality and justice.
So, that was back in 1900. 1900, wow. So, what do we have today? what do we have today? I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you something. How history repeats itself. Oh, you're going to really trip out about this. I'm gonna show a little bit of this documentary. How, they say, how come, why can't people let go of the past? Well, I'm about to show you why, watch this. This is a different city, but it's in the 20th century.
Conservatism as we have known it. This is not republicanism as we have known it. In the last few years, a new form of right-wing extremism by the name of the alt-right has emerged.
Real white power!
Define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying, define it for me. Come on. It began in the US and is now spreading across the globe.
My solution to the Calais problem is to repatriate all the immigrants that are here and say no more can come. And I would take all these traitors and I would march them into the Channel Tunnel and I would blow the Channel Tunnel up. That's my solution.
Most in the alt-right believe that whites all over the world are under the threat of extinction.
I wonder if these refugees, vulnerable though they are, should be seen rather as the enemy and therefore not rescued from the sea but actually shot down. Maybe we should blow up their boats, send a torpedo and just fuck them up.
From relative obscurity, the alt-right are now increasingly organized and meet regularly behind closed doors to plan for the race war they believe is coming.
As the present order begins to disintegrate, will we be able to create a parallel and alternative structure?
The British advocacy group Hope Not Hate decided to infiltrate the alt-right to investigate what the leadership was thinking and planning.
Känner du några av dem och kan koppla ihop oss?
This is the story of a young man's year undercover with Nazis, nationalists, and white supremacists.
We need to mainstream this stuff, or more precisely, we need to bring the mainstream towards us.
Ain't that something? But that was in England. Let's see how it does in America.
My hair okay? It's not flying around in 20 directions.
So as you know, I am a woman of color.
Yes.
Yes. I am the daughter of immigrants. I am a Muslim. I am a feminist. I am a lefty liberal. I see your face, and what I want to ask you is, am I your enemy?
You're not subjectively my enemy, but what you are promoting will lead to the disappearance of my people and my culture. And I will tell you this, it annoys me tremendously when I'm told by some immigrant or a child of immigrants that the only reason my country is worthwhile is because people like them have come here. It's as if to say, my ancestors built a dung heap, and I don't doubt your goodwill, but your goodwill is objectively going to lead to the oblivion of my people. I'm sorry, there is no other way to see it.
My name is Dia Khan. I'm an activist and filmmaker. When I was 6 years old, my father took me to my first rally against racism and fascism. I grew up in Norway, where white skinhead gangs terrorized our small Muslim community. My father told us things would change, but extremism and racism are on the rise again in Europe and America. In the summer of 2016, the BBC interviewed me about living in a multicultural society.
The fact of the matter is, the UK is never going to be white again. Similarly, our parents who have left Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Muslim countries, for them to think that they can re-establish those countries and the lives that they had there over here, it's not gonna happen.
Stop illegal immigration, bring back American jobs. So he was saying things that could have been right, a lot of things that were right out of our playbook that we've been saying for years. We've been kind of on the fringes for a long time, and with our talking points finally appearing in the White House, nationalism has become more mainstream.
Jeff hates the idea of multiculturalism. He thinks it's part of a plot against the white race.
I think it goes back to the Zionists and the Jews. Jews control all the media, and they're pushing this agenda that we should all mix together, and I think it's to dumb down the population and to make us easier to control.
I'm gonna stop it right here. I gotta stop this right here. Let me say this. They talk about a white ethno state, right? And you see the history of America. Has Springfield, Illinois come back to the way it was when they drove the blacks out and all these other people? Has it been the same? Have anything they invented, being a white ethno state, have ever succeeded? There are towns in Illinois just alone, are practically abandoned, are ghost towns. Ain't that much industry going through there. You know why? Because people like this keep it the way people want to keep it like it is in Europe, just like here in America. But do you notice that none of these people can't wrap their brains around this? That if you don't have some industry in there, it's unrealistically your area be able to survive. We're heading towards a recession, and this is what they push for. They took the government like the situation with ICE recently. South Korea is about to drop $250 million around Georgia. It would uplift some counties and towns of Georgia, probably next to Alabama and probably Mississippi. But these racist people wants to keep pushing stuff. So the ICE, and when the men from South Korea, and they mimic them, and they mistreat them so bad that these men didn't have no record from South Korea. These men wasn't here legally. Some Karen, just like it was back then, made a false accusation on a Honda company that had permission to bring the engineers and technicians over so they can train American workers. They weren't going to live here. They were going to train mostly probably white men, and probably it'll be a few other people, probably some Asians and some other people. But most of the time, it's going to be white men, college-age white men, trade school-age white men, and probably a few black men and women, whatever. But because we can't seem to get this through these knuckleheads in America, so guess what? We will rather allow these people to attack innocent people. They don't have a lick of brains. You worry about your race. And we don't know with some of these people what you want to blend in racially with you as far as mixing with your race. They're probably just coming over here just to do a job, and most people of other races stick with their own race. Most of them don't marry outside their race. But these crazy people, like these people in a couple of these videos, don't seem to understand that. Why would anybody want to blend with something that ignorant? I mean, in the end, they show that someone finally got some common sense and came around. But look what we have. You're still trying to shift the blame, but you won't shift the blame to people that look like you in upper elite positions. You're shifting the blame, but every other country knows, different ethnic groups know, if you work together, it benefits all. It benefits different countries. But because we have this small-minded set that, you know, we're scared of these people, so we form a group that basically terrorize these people. America has did this from the beginning. And when we say, oh, it's, people say it's the past, I showed you the past and the present. What are they doing? The same thing that they did back in the early 19th, 20th century. And the curse of this is on America. We all got to suffer for in small walks of life because of stuff like this. Then when people come over to try to do some business like that, you got some idiots that will rise up like this. Probably the same way as in certain parts of Europe where these idiots are trying to do that. If America fall, England gonna probably fall if they allow this stuff to happen. Because they're scared of something different in other places. But yet them same Europe place like America has a advance. They so proud to be white, but have they advance? You so brilliant, but have they advance? And then when they do something like over there just to maybe get educated and maybe teach the citizens, you got a group of men that can't handle somebody that can handle people being over there. That's something wrong. Because they're scared to change, so we gotta form up and start doing and that's an insult, because Martin Luther King wasn't like that. Martin Luther King was for the poor. Martin Luther King was trying to get right so we can equally on playing field. Black people was not they only react because they was attacking us, so we had to react. But black people didn't go around just attacking white people. They didn't just do that unless you start something with them, like the Mexicans, anybody else. But it's always the same group of people doing this. This is why we can't get ahead in America. And I don't know what's these small-minded, insecure white males like this that can't seem to understand this. So they made a town. Well, that's why I thought it was such an idiotic. The northwest part of Arkansas, which is predominantly white. Why would you have to? I know it had to be some white people say, these people are some freaking idiots, because they know that some white people know that part of Arkansas is predominantly white, but you gotta call it a white town. They might have a 3%, 2% black population, maybe a 1% Asian population, maybe indigenous people, but they're not going around there. But yet the area hasn't progressed. And you go to parts of Arkansas and different places like that in the Midwest and South. It's because why we have progressed, because this is keeping us in bondage, keeping all people in bondage. And when you allow behavior like this to happen, like you allow it to come from other parts, you don't have no progression. Oh my God, a fearful white ethno state. What? What are these idiots talking about? And I'm like, there are still white people that stay with white people as their spouses and children. No matter, don't mean that you know I'm friends with people that most of their spouses are white. What the heck are you talking about? Some of them I know live in predominantly white neighborhoods, but they're cool. What the heck are you talking about? What is wrong with some of these people? Most black people stick with black. Most Asian people stick with Asian people. Most Latinos stick with Latino people. South Asian, Arabs, certain people from Africa, Russia, Ukraine. You name it, the people that's over here. Because it's a language thing. It's a cultural thing. This is what's wrong with America. And this is why we've fallen behind. And we're one of the few. And in every place that had this kind of racism in the world, they have fallen. No God that made the human race is going to stand up there and progress an area that keep doing like this in any part of the world. No God in heaven, only God in heaven, to his son Christ. Okay, this nonsense, because it's nonsense. It's foolishness. It hasn't solved not one thing. They have brought more violence in that 300 or 400 years since the beginning of time. Their forefathers, what these individuals have done. And I tell you one thing, you're going to pay for it one day. And luckily some people have repented and they changed their ways, but if you going to have that you might don't know. And if anybody is a white nationalist that'll come across this, and you keep that in your heart, remember one thing, and you listen to me very carefully. You don't repent from that when you lead this life with all that bitterness from different people, you will never enter into heaven. You'll be written out of that Lamb's Book of Life. Imagine you live your human years and all you did was spit that stuff out and indoctrinate, poison your mind. You will never enter heaven. Think about it. And maybe people that didn't agree with you, they were good people, but didn't agree. You didn't like them because they didn't agree with your opinion and your politics. And when you get at the end of the door, I say, where is my white ethno heaven? I'm surely the God of heaven gonna answer that question. He gonna put you in your paradise, but it's not gonna be under his kingdom. Because some of you say that you're Christians, right? Like Jared Taylor. That man's going straight to hell. That's all I gotta say about that, because he allowed people to follow his logic. If he don't repent and he died, he gonna see, his name will be like many men before him. They name me in the book of life. So I hope you enjoy this life now, because you ain't never gonna see it in the next life. Because God's not gonna taint your spirit up there with all this mess. That's all I gotta say, ladies and gentlemen. But you see the past and the present. Till next time, take care. See you on next video.